Hi, I'm Tealish, and you're watching Coffee and Clicks. Thank you for watching. Today we're going to be talking about the new 2023 HeroClix Rules Changes that have been implemented. Well, they haven't actually started. They're going to be implemented in the amazing Spider-Man Beyond Amazing set.
Yeah.
And today we're joined by rules expert Brian Galley and
Hi.
how's it going? And for everybody at home that's listening or watching, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy content like this, please like the video, subscribe. I really appreciate all the support. It makes me motivated to continue to produce great content. Also, if you are watching and tuning in about the 2023 rules changes, at the bottom of your screen, there is a website where you can click on and find links to the updated rules articles that WizKids put out. They put out 4 rules articles, and also within those articles there are links. There's a link to the comprehensive rules, comprehensive rule book, the complete comprehensive rule book. So go check those resources out if you're interested in more information about the rules. But we're going to be talking about it today with Brian. Topics to discuss: we're going to be talking about terrain markers, the impact to maps, powers and abilities changes that are coming up, and other miscellaneous changes to the comprehensive rules. So we'll be talking about all that stuff, and let's get right into it. Brian, the first rules article that WizKids put out. By the way, I have my mug, everybody. I have my trademark mug here, but today what I'm drinking is I'm drinking out of a Yeti. So if you're confused by the Yeti, I do
Looks
have the
good.
mug right here, and I have iced coffee today. So a little bit of a curveball there. So
Sweltering February weather. We really need the iced coffee.
yeah, so let's talk about it. There were 4 rules articles. One was the terrain markers. The second one was about the map size. The third one is about powers and abilities, and the fourth article was about miscellaneous changes to the rules, which included things like theme team probability control and theme teams and other things. So let's start with the first article. We'll start with terrain markers. Brian, why, in your opinion, did WizKids want to introduce terrain markers in the first place?
So yeah, like the article says, the a lot of this grew out of just needing, the fact that standard objects just were not really something that interested players. Just to try to make that, a bigger part of the game. And as they were looking into ways to take care of that, it sort of grew out. There was this larger issue with how to put cat. Sorry, the cat is being really obnoxious today. To try to wrestle him while I talk. A lot of it grew into this desire to expand out on the interactivity of maps, how to make maps feel more dynamic, more cinematic in gameplay, and that grew into placeable terrain. So now we'll have the ability to drop terrain onto the maps. They showed off a couple pieces, but there's going to be more coming out that will influence how the map is played, and those terrain markers can be picked up by characters' super strength, moved around with telekinesis, used in attacks. It just really adds a whole extra layer to the strategy of the game.
Okay, so it adds strategy, it adds fun, it adds flavor, I guess. Yeah, so that was kind of the goal.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's six. I've done I've done a little testing at home with the just printing out the terrain, the special terrain from the rules update, just the ones that have been previewed, and it does make for a fun game. Like placing the terrain is almost like a mini game in and of
Yeah.
itself. Like before the game starts, like where should I place 3? Because you get to place 3, right? You get to place 3
Right.
terrain
Yeah.
markers.
You get 3 in your choice of standard objects. The 'cause light and heavy are not a thing anymore. Objects are just objects. They're now a type of terrain marker that just doesn't change the terrain of the square they're in. So you can place down any combination of objects, hindering, blocking, smoke, water, elevated, any sort of marker that you want to put down.
So how do you think it affects gameplay, just specifically? Like, how do you think the terrain marker, the existence of terrain markers? I mean, it's yet to be seen, I guess, because it hasn't really been tested. But in comparing from before to now, how do you think it will affect gameplay?
Oh, that is a really deep hole to get into, rabbit hole to get into. Um, I mean, the map is in a lot of ways the most important part of team building. Just having those the terrain, I guess you say, that you play on really shapes how the game flows. So giving players the opportunity to. This cat is trying to plotting my death here today. I'm sorry, guys. Like glowering at me and just aggressively needing the bed for me, but whatever. The ability to just shape how the game goes. I would say, yeah. Being able to drop blocking down to stem your opponent's alpha strike, or place elevated to give yourself a sniper's nest to go be able to see over your opponent's terrain and hit them. There's a huge back and forth in how terrain gets used. I mean, every team is going to approach terrain differently based on what their needs are.
Yeah, I mean, certain teams will need the water, or certain teams will need hindering if you have stealth on your team.
You're running a bunch of swim characters, being able to drop down a couple water markers, and I mean we're gonna get big squares of water. It's not just not all these markers are little 1x1s. There's some that are like L-shaped or long lines, 4x4, 3x3 squares of terrain.
Something that I came up against, or that I was confused about when I was playtesting myself, was about placing the terrain marker specifically. Right. So it was mentioned in one of the articles that there are transition
squares, right?
Transition squares. So when you're placing, like, let's say elevated terrain, which has, does that have a transition square on every square of the elevated? So you can't place 2 elevated terrains next to each other.
Sort of, yeah. When you're placing your markers down, you cannot during game setup. But once the game's going, that this doesn't matter anymore. But during game setup, you can't place your terrain markers such that they are overlapping any printed transition squares in the map.
Okay.
So transition squares, those are the ladders on elevation that you'll see, so you can cross between elevated lines. Some new maps coming out are going to have transition squares between squares of the same elevation to denote like doorways and stuff that you're not allowed to block off during game setup.
Okay.
But yeah, during setup you can't. Loki, is this necessary? So yeah, during game setup, you just can't place your terrain such that they are covering over any transition squares, just to keep you from blocking chunks of the map off from your opponent.
Okay.
I just totally lost where my train of thought was going.
Are you allowed to place 2 elevated terrains next to each other?
So long as you're not overlapping transition squares, yeah.
Okay.
So not every elevated, not every border of elevation has a transition square.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, if you want to drop your elevated marker so that its transition squares are butting up against the printed elevation, that's fine. And you can use that to expand out a chunk of elevation.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't drop it such that it's covering up the transition square to get up onto that printed elevated.
Okay. And are you allowed to drop terrain on printed hindering or printed water or even printed blocking?
Water and hindering, yes. You can't cover blocking because that's a rules of occupancy issue.
Okay, so it's not like the old boxing ring or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Those are special terrain. That's a whole different beast than terrain markers, and we're probably not seeing special terrain again for a long while.
Okay. I think we had some questions from people on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Well, also, this was a question I had. I think you answered this for me before. So let's say I pick up, if I'm charging and I pick up a square of special terrain and I want to use it in an attack, can I end my attack in the same square that the special terrain was? Not, I'm using the word special terrain. I mean,
right, the non-standard or mark trim or whatever. Yeah,
yeah.
I know what you mean.
If I want to end my attack, if I want to end my
Sorry.
attack in the square that it was, can I do that?
Yes, because as you move into the square adjacent to it, the character with super strength or just an object, not whatever, when you pick it up and it just goes off the map onto that character's card, just so they know that they're holding it. Once it's off the map, you can just move right into the square it was in.
Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. And then also, yeah, this seems pretty intuitive. It's just like the way picking up objects was.
Yeah, exactly the way.
Yeah, it's the same way as picking up objects. But Arvel had some good questions on Facebook. He said, "Can you pick up elevated terrain, and then when you're dropping it off, can you drop it off underneath a character?"
Yep.
You can. Okay.
You can, yeah. If someone is standing on elevated and, Superman comes in with his super strength and just picks up the elevated, everyone who was on the elevated marker is going to fall and take 1 damage from the fall. Same way if they got knocked off the ledge.
And you could also drop it back underneath the character and raise the elevation.
Correct.
Okay.
Just last night we were playing in a local game with the new rules, and I had Polaris from the Hellfire Gala. Power action TK a chunk of elevated underneath my opponent's team. He had Martian Manhunter. Couldn't attack Manhunter, but power TK the elevation underneath him, then free TK to pull it back out from him. So he took the fall damage and got off the untargetability click.
Oh, that's awesome.
There's a lot of neat little tricks you can do.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, okay, so let's say I barrier, like, Molecule Man or somebody puts up barrier, and then Hulk comes over, picks it up, but he doesn't use it in attack. Then the next turn the barrier goes away.
Yes.
Does it go away?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just because it's not on the map doesn't mean that the trigger that says that it gets removed from the game doesn't happen. So yeah, the barrier will just vaporize in Hulk's hands.
Okay. All right. So also when you're destroying let's say a multi-square terrain, does the whole thing get destroyed?
Yep. So multi-square terrain is just a single game element. So if any part of it breaks, the whole piece breaks.
Okay.
That's only true of markers. And if think things that are like printed on the map are exactly the same as they've always been. Each individual square is its own thing.
Now, can you pick up hindering or water and use it in an attack?
Hindering, yes.
Okay.
Water, no. Water cannot be picked up or used in attacks. It can be placed by effects that say you can place terrain, like telekinesis could pick up a square of water and move it somewhere else. But yeah, Superman can't run over, just cup his hands and splash.
Because these are all really interesting rules questions. So yeah, these are good answers. So
there is one that look at it. There is a new subset of hindering called smoke, and that is what's produced by Smoke Cloud.
Okay.
Smoke terrain, much like water, cannot be held and can't be used in attacks.
Okay. So that was the one change to Smoke Cloud was that.
Well, that minimum range thing, but yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, smoke terrain is a new type of terrain that really shouldn't surprise anyone because we've all been collectively calling those smoke terrain for years now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is distinct from regular hindering terrain.
Okay. And do you think, overall, do you think this makes the game like overly complex, or do you think it's like no? Like, what do you think?
I don't think so. A lot of this is just what was there before with objects. There is an extra layer of strategy because these terrain affects the board in ways objects don't. But we all are basically familiar with these rules already. We've been using them with objects since day one of the game.
So it's pretty intuitive to just run over, grab an object, and use it in an attack. It's just now there's just more ways of doing it, or it's just a little bit more strategy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's move on to the second topic of discussion. This is Article 2. It's about the impact to maps, which, so we have the terrain markers. You get to place 3 of them. Each player gets to place 3. But, the changes to maps were that there are less symmetrical maps. You're going to have minimum of 4, change to 4 minimum range on a lot of different powers. Also, less terrain clutter in general, because, you are going to be adding the terrain.
Yeah.
So the maps need to have less terrain printed. And then also they're going to be smaller maps. They're going to be 16 by 16 grids, so 2 feet by 2 feet.
Yep. Same as a Battle Royale map.
Same as a Battle Royale map. Why? This question is from Edward, and I had this question as well. Why did WizKids choose to implement smaller maps?
So there are a couple answers to that. Part of it is just that it does speed the game up a little bit. It gets us right into the action. Another big deal is, this is something we've heard from stores, is HeroClix eats up a lot of space. It's not the most compelling game for comic book stores whatnot to host games in. Just by eating up just that little bit less table space, it becomes a more competitive game for them to host events. Competitive versus say what they would get from a Magic tournament or a Pokemon tournament or something. Games that eat up a little less space, you can put more people at the tables, more people buying snacks and sodas and stuff. It does help increase the footprint that HeroClix has in game stores. Gets more people into it too if they're more willing to host events for us. So there's 2 prongs there. There's the game design prong, where makes games faster, more fun, more dynamic, and then the marketing prong, where it makes HeroClix better able to compete with other games for table space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my testing, I played yesterday with the new rules. We played on smaller maps,
Mm-hmm.
I played my wife set a timer for our game, and it felt like a really long game. We were scoring a lot of points. We were in the mix right away.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, this is a really long game. It was only 49 minutes, the game.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was like, wow.
You get so much more game in the game.
Yeah, we got more game in the game. And then also I was like, wow, I have enough space that I could put my tray in front of me and all my cards, and everything was just lined up. I had so much arm space for just and we were able to get 2 games on the same table very easily, and it was great.
Yeah. There may be some growing pains in the next couple of years while we just sort of transition from the old way to the new way and all, but it's worth it. There really are no downsides.
And what about the choice of putting the placement on the edge of the map instead of using 2 rows or using a purple starting area? We got rid of starting areas, so if you're watching and you didn't know about that, there's no starting areas anymore, or they're moving forward. So there's just going to be whoever chooses first player, whoever gets first player chooses the edge of the map, any of the 4 edges, and you line up your characters in 1 row on the edge of the map. So why that choice?
So a big chunk of that comes down to just looking at the square maps and realizing that if we're not telling people where to start, the map can be rotated around in different orientations. Makes the maps, especially we're going for less symmetry. Even if a map winds up being symmetrical in one way, it's likely not going to be symmetrical the other way. So there's more choice to be had for the player that has to pick side. It also helps to curb alpha strikes a little bit, which is a concern that we had with the smaller maps. Which, if there's less distance to get across and you're still running with the old figures designed for the larger sized maps, there is a concern that they're just going to be able to just jump across and hammer the other opponent way too fast. So by forcing them into a single row, it does make it harder to get telekinesis off, carries off. It's just, you have to spend a little bit of time engineering that sort of strike before you can actually pull it off, which is just a little bit of a downside to running an Alpha Strike team, which healthier for the game.
Yeah, so that was actually one of my questions too. Was are you trying to deter or kind of hinder Alpha Strike that strategy, and like in what ways are you trying to do that?
A little bit. I mean, we're not trying to really kill Alpha Strike. Alpha Strike. It's a part of the game. Having that sort of hyper aggressive play is a valued strategy. Like it's about we want people to be able to play it how they want to play. And if you want a really aggressive team, that option should be there for you. But we have to make sure that that's not the only way to play. There needs to be a balance, and a lot of the things with going to a smaller map are upsides for Alpha Strike teams. So we needed to cut back a little bit on that, just give them some downsides to balance it out.
Okay, and also there are new rules as far as deciding who goes first and and who picks the map. So
Right.
what is currently in effect is that if you win the initiative roll, you go first and choose the map. But the new change to that initiative roll is that if you win initiative, you get to choose whether you go first or second. And if you go second, you pick the map. If you go first, then you place everything first and you decide which edge you're going on, right?
Right.
So, how is that like? Why did you decide on that, and how do you think that's going to affect gameplay?
I mean, this is something players have been asking for years. I mean, and anyone who plays competitive HeroClix knows first player was very heavily favored in the rules over second player. So we're just trying to introduce a little bit of parity there, make it so that that previously wasn't even a choice. If you won the initiative roll, you were first player. We're just trying to introduce another decision point, another way of looking at the game. So it does take a little bit more strategic thought now as to whether you want to go first and get the benefits of going first, to get the chance to get first blood and all that, or do you want to go second and dictate the field of battle? They're both very important choices. So having each player have a hand in making them balances the game out a little bit better than it was before.
Yeah, I tested it in sealed because I was playing sealed yesterday. We were doing sealed with the new rules, and every time I won the initiative, I chose to go second.
Especially for sealed, I think that's a fair choice.
Yeah, the map matters in sealed like a lot. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, in constructed, usually you're worried about like getting your alpha strike or you're trying to get first blood or whatever. But in sealed, the map you're not going to have too many alpha teams. So
right.
In sealed, so it's just mainly the map choice is really important depending on what your team is.
Right, but on the other hand, if you look across your opponent and they're like, wow, they pulled a TK guy and a really fast hypersonic guy. Maybe I don't want them going first.
Yeah, true, yeah. Or if they have like dark side or something, yeah, like
right.
Somebody get across like, I mean, so how is that actually brings up a question. So how are like what figures are like really good with these new rules? Like with the smaller map size, now you have like you still have some characters that haven't been rotated out that have like 8 range, 10 range. Phoenix Sentinel is like a colossal that can go across the map, or you have Saturnine that has like a really long reach.
Saturnine, Dark Side. There's a handful. The I mean, if we could just go pull up Clix Nexus and just go down a laundry list of everyone that's got the 8 range, 10 speed hypersonic. But big thing to keep in mind with that is that the older maps are still legal. I mean, when the new rules hit, it's not like they're all getting simultaneously retired. They're staying legal along with the old ways of doing a map setup with starting zones. Fees for those are staying legal up until their sets rotate. So when you're building your team, you're deciding what maps on, it's a good idea just to keep an older, larger map on hand just in case your opponent is running a team of all those really like long range alpha strike people. You can still put them on the older map and get the extra distance if you need it.
Okay, so that's interesting. So for people watching at home, you don't have to play a smaller map if you don't want
Right.
to.
It's
Um, I mean that
I mean, that,
until all the bigger maps rotate out, you still can go to them. So if you go
we've
second,
got like 2 years till that happens. There's going to be
yeah,
some lingering for a while.
yeah. So hopefully by the time those larger maps rotate out, also all the really long range, really
Mhm.
long reach figures
Yeah.
will rotate out as well. But so on your for a tournament play on your build sheet, do you have to list the specific terrain that you want to use?
Yes.
So you stick with
So
that terrain. You can't switch it out or change it between game.
right, just like now with a if you put down a light heavy as your objects, you have to run a light and a heavy.
Okay.
So you're going to put down that I'm running the 2x2 hindering the the whatever the con- container shipping container elevated thing. However you note it, just so it's clear what terrain marker you're running.
And does it
And
have
those
to be a WizKids printed terrain marker, or can you kind of like make your own, or how does that work?
so there's two prongs to that answer. For the standard terrain markers, you can do your own. If you just have a 1x1 square of terrain with the regular values on it, that's fine. You don't need WizKids ones for that. If you're looking to run one of the non-standard ones, like say the shipping container one that got previewed, you will need the WizKids one for that. Um, this was something that we kind of weighed and discussed, but we don't want to introduce the possibility of less than honest individuals printing their own with like modified special stats on them,
Okay.
and that not getting caught by the judge. So yeah, non-standard terrain, you do need to have the official one. And if you want to make your own for home games, or you have like a nice acrylic one made, just keep the official one on hand so you can show your opponent, listen, it is the right stats and all.
Okay. Okay.
But
Um, and so with the smaller maps, they're available right now through the miniatures games, right? The starter kits. So if I wanted to get my hands on a smaller map, I can get the Batman Team Up miniatures game.
yep. So Batman Team Up Miniatures game does have so it has one of those as the miniature games do, the tile maps. You can run that as the older full size 2x3 foot size, or you can remove the two middle tiles and smush the remaining four edge tiles together to make a 2x2 map. It's legal to play in both assemblies. You just got to know which one you're using. So, like on your build sheet, if you're running the 2x3, okay, I remember the Haunted Game Show and the 2x2 Haunted Game Show, that would just be two different slots of your three maps.
Okay, and then also for Spider-Man Beyond Amazing, there are also
Yep.
going to be more maps available.
Yep. Same places you've been getting maps. We'll have the smaller maps in those. So like the miniatures game,
Okay.
play at home kit, the release day OP. If you got a map from it and previously, you'll be getting a map from it going forward.
Okay.
This is also where the terrain markers come from. This isn't necessarily this isn't a every time thing, but going forward, generally, if you're getting a map from it, you can expect to get some punch board that has terrain markers too.
Great.
Yep. Which again, I'm not saying every map that's going to have a terrain marker thing, but it's going to be a common enough thing that like set releases. This is the release day map for it, and the terrain that accompanies that map.
Okay. And then going forward, though, they're not going to be printing any more 2x3 maps, or
It's not something we have any plans that there are any plans to do. No.
okay. And then all right. So I think we talked a lot about maps. So we did a first. We talked about terrain markers. That was our first topic. We are talking about Article 2, which was the impact to maps. Article 3 is about the powers and abilities changes, and there were a lot of different powers that were changed. I mean, we have Pulse Wave was changed so that it had
It's got the fixed range of 4 now. Yeah.
fixed range of 4. I think it got a lot better. because of that. I mean, it was. I think it's good. A lot of people argue that Pulse Wave is not as good anymore, but I think it's definitely a useful power for sure.
Yeah.
And
Those people are entitled to their opinion, however silly it might be.
we have Quake. Quake also got, I think, a buff.
Oh, yeah.
I think it got a buff. Yeah, because of the Yeah. So Brian, you want to explain Quake?
Yeah. So Quake got a buff and a nerf, but I'm pretty sure that overall it came out a lot stronger than where it was before.
Yeah.
So Quake has gone from being a passive to a power that needs its own dedicated close action to activate. So you can't say hypersonic Quake anymore. You can't flurry in both attacks or Quakes. Quake is its own thing again.
Mm-hmm.
But when you Quake, before you make the attack, you destroy all terrain markers and printed blocking terrain within 1 square of your character. Then you make a close attack targeting all adjacent opposing characters. So if there's an opponent on the other side of a wall, and Quake breaks the wall down before you get to attack them. If they're standing on a piece of elevated terrain, Quake will elevated terrain marker. You got to specify marker. Quake will blow that marker up, drop them down, and then you punch them. It gets even more nuts if you have giant reach. It'll still only destroy the terrain within 1 square, but giant reach too. If someone's high behind one square of blocking, you can charge right up to them, Quake to pop the blocking, and then use your giant reach to punch over the debris. And Quake is a absolute can opener of a power now. Just
yeah. No, and then that so there's a lot of that Quake has interactions with the new terrain. There's another power that has an interaction with the new terrain, which is Super Strength. Super Strength got a huge buff because before there wasn't a lot going on with Super Strength. Do you want to explain Super Strength for us too?
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of have been explaining Super Strength a fair bit. Super Strength is just what lets you pick up and hold the terrain markers. So, as I mentioned before, light and heavy objects don't exist anymore. Just all objects are objects. All characters can pick up and hold objects. Super Strength before will let you pick up and hold heavy objects. It now lets you pick up and hold any kind of terrain marker, with the exception of smoke, debris, and water.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, if you don't have Super Strength, you cannot pick up these markers.
Right.
Only if you have Super Strength. That includes hindering or anything like that. You can only pick it up if you have Super Strength.
Yeah, hindering, elevated, blocking. As long as it's not, as long as it's not a smoke marker, a debris marker, or a water marker, or some sort of object that has a mobile, because a mobile can't be.
What about just a standard object? Can you pick up a standard object if you don't have Super Strength?
Yes. Okay. All characters can pick up and hold objects. Only Super Strength characters can pick up and hold the other kinds of terrain.
Okay.
So important to note, there are equipment right now. I think the Doc Ock arms. There's a couple that are Null's sword. I can't remember the name of it.
The Necro sword, I think.
Necro sword. They're all black. Yes. There are equipment that have the red ring. They're heavy objects. They're not heavy objects anymore, because heavy is a retired game term.
Okay.
So all characters can pick those up now if they want to. I mean, granted, they also start equipped now, so it doesn't come up nearly as often. But yeah, anything that was a heavy object before is just a regular object now.
And we talked about Smoke Cloud. It just has minimum range 4, and it also produces smoke terrain, which is a new type of terrain. Support got a huge buff.
Oh yeah. So support is like worth running now. It's been the redheaded stepchild for a long time. So support. I mean, it went from like a paragraph of text to just being 2 sentences. Power: choose an adjacent friendly character and roll a d6. Heal that character a number of clicks equal to half the result, rounded up. So you don't need to be away from opposing characters anymore. There's no sort of pseudo attack roll that's not an attack roll to try to hit to actually get the heal. It's just You take the action, you choose who you're healing, and you roll to see how much to heal.
It was like similar to the way Ferdinand worked, right? The
Yes.
yeah, the character Ferdinand from WW80. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, there's been talk about fixing support for a while. Ferdinand made a good dry run. People liked him, and it worked.
yeah, and also there's a lot of characters with free support. So
Yeah.
that's fun.
Chase Fred.
Yeah.
There's plenty of monsters and mysticals running around the meta right now. If your opponent's running any of them, he's a free support every turn.
Nice. Also telekinesis. I think we had questions from Brian and McConnell about telekinesis.
All right.
So, McConnell says, talk through telekinesis. What exactly I mean, like things like what is a ranged terrain action?
Okay.
Just talk through the power of telekinesis. Brian says, of all the powers, which one do you think is going to have the biggest effect?
All right. So we'll start by talking through telekinesis. We'll go for the easy one. So the minimum range changed on it from 6 to 4, which is every minimum range that was minimum 6 is now minimum range 4. That's going to be an across the board change. But so it does the same thing it used to, where you can place a friendly single base character within range of line of fire, to the score within range of line of fire. It can now only get placed up to 4 squares from where it started instead of 6 squares, but that part's the same thing. The new parts it can now place terrain, much the same way it would only be able to place objects before. So you can pick up a piece of terrain and place it 4 squares away from where it was. If the terrain has multiple squares, only one of those squares needs to wind up within 4 squares in line of fire. Just the same way as effects that place multi-base characters. So if you go pick up the that was a 2x3 elevated shipping container, and you put it just so that the very corner of it is within the your range of line of fire, and then the rest of it is just reaching further back, that's fine. The last part is that the character can make ranged terrain actions as if it was holding terrain markers within range and line of fire. So ranged terrain actions are the same thing as ranged object actions were, where if you're holding an object, you can throw it. This is ranged terrain actions. If you're holding a terrain, you can throw it. Terrain markers will have their values printed on them that'll show you how far you can throw it, how much damage it deals when it's thrown. So standard values for that deals 2 damage when thrown. It can be thrown 4 squares. So if you had your TK character pick up, say, a piece of hindering, they could throw it 4 squares out for themselves. They don't actually pick up and hold it. They just get to treat it like it's being held and make that attack as if they were holding it.
So if I have a character here, the terrain is here within line of fire and range,
yep,
and I want to throw it down here, it has to be 4 squares in line of fire from the character, not from the terrain, right?
Right. When you're making the range attack, you don't need to worry about where the terrain is in relation to the target. Just that the terrain is within your range and line of fire. Minimum 4, because it's minimum 4 for telekinesis.
Okay. And also, when I'm placing terrain, let's say I do that first thing where you're placing terrain. Yep. Is it also within range and line of fire of the character, or?
So yeah, that is a little more complicated. That it still has the same sort of triangle of line of fire for that telekinesis uses, where you have to be able to see the thing you're moving. You have to be able to see where it's going, and the two things have to be before need to have the clear line that each square can see the other one.
And when I'm placing it, can I place it on a transition square, or am I not allowed to do that? You are.
Yep, you can. Right. Okay. The transition squares only matter during setup. Okay. Once the game's in motion, you can move terrain about, shuffle around however you'd like.
Okay.
you just can't lock up the map right from the get go. You got to work for it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's interesting. And then also there's a change to improve movement blocking. So, and I like
we totally brushed over the other guy's question.
What was the other guy's question? Better. Oh yeah. So Brian's question was, which power or which changes do you think are going to have the greatest effect?
I mean, I have to say, I think super strength overall is going to have the greatest effect, because super strength is going to be going from a power that no one uses to one that's literally map defining, map shaping. Um, Smoke Cloud TK, I don't think they're going to really change much in their use. Support, support is big. I just don't think it's as big as super strength. Yeah, super strength would be my answer.
Yeah, definitely super strength. I think people are going to be excited for TK with the
Oh,
new.
oh yeah, TK is picking up a lot of fun little tricks. Like I mentioned the with Polaris doing the elevated drop thing, but TK is already such a used power. I don't think it's going to really see a huge change in
Yeah. Okay.
play. Yeah,
Um.
I am destroy blocking. This was a fun one.
Yeah, improved movement, destroy blocking. Now the blocking does not get destroyed after resolution. So if you move through blocking, it gets destroyed immediately, which
Mm-hmm.
means you can land in a square of blocking that you destroyed.
Yeah, so this was a long time coming. I mean, anyone that's taught people how to play, you explain it, oh, this is the Juggernaut. He can run through the wall. So he's like, okay, so I'm just going to stop here, and like, right next to you, make the attack. Like, well, you can't stop there because the wall's not destroyed yet. It doesn't pop until 5 seconds after Juggernaut's finished moving through it. It's just this really complicated games ruly, unintuitive mess. So getting that cleaned up, it's just a much easier way to explain how it works, and it makes characters that can break down blocking a much more effective counter to barrier.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, because now you can just move through blocking and also attack somebody.
mhm. If someone's got the barrier set up, you could have your Hulk or Juggernaut or whoever charge in right up adjacent to him and take the swing.
Yeah, that's big. That's big.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I'm getting to a question about that later, like
Oh, there
about
was
like
one there was one other power that got a tweak that wasn't mentioned in the article.
oh, which one?
Uh, Battle Fury.
Okay,
So Battle Fury now allows characters to make range actions and the range attack that follows with them to make range terrain actions. No matter how bad you are, never not how to put. You are now never mad enough that you can't throw something at the guy pissing you off. It's
okay, but they can't just make range attacks though. Like if they have
right.
range, they're
Yeah,
still not allowed to do that.
right. Previously, Battle Fury barred all range attacks. Now it's barred all range attacks except for throwing terrain, which
Okay,
it makes sense. People get mad, they throw things.
and that includes throwing objects because objects are a subset of terrain.
Correct. Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, cool, yeah,
Yeah.
and then yeah, I mean also like I think one thing we have to talk about is just like some characters that got a buff and some characters that got a like
Yeah.
a nerf, I guess, from the new rules. I mean, I don't know. I
Yep.
don't really know which ones they would be. But I mean, let's go into topic number 4. We have
Sure.
terrain markers, impact to maps, powers and abilities. Our fourth
Nah.
our fourth topic is probably the one that's the most controversial.
Yeah.
Is
This.
is the miscellaneous changes to the comprehensive rules changes. The first thing that well, all right. Before we get into that, let's just talk about what characters do you think got a big buff or a big nerf?
Ooh. I mean, anyone with support and super strength, really. This is another one where these are just like really broad, sweeping changes that's gonna take a while to narrow down. But I'll be honest, I'm excited to go break out that 200-point Hulk more than I ever was
Yeah, the Hulk
before.
is going to be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I was thinking, like, with all the kind of like, I feel like barriers kind of got a nerf. So like any like Molecule Man guys like that, even though they're still good, but
Yeah.
I mean,
It, Barrier definitely got hit, but I mean, I don't want to make it sound like Barrier is worthless now. It is not. Uh, even if you're just forcing your opponent to funnel their using it to force your opponent to funnel their actions into dealing with your barrier with their super strength characters or TK to move it, those are actions they're not spending otherwise to attack you.
Yeah.
It might be less effective now than it was, but it is still effective.
Yeah.
Barrier also picked up a new offensive uh, synergy it didn't have before, where you can make your own barrier to supply your super strength characters with weapons to fight with.
Yes. So there are a lot of, I mean, and this is just going back to the beginning when like my first couple questions that we were discussing. There are a lot of new tricks and there's a lot of new strategy, and it's going to make the game more fun and more layered.
Yeah.
So I like that. I mean, this is just leading into our next topic, but characters with prob are gonna get much more valuable.
Yeah, prob stonks go up.
Let's talk about the next topic, which is the miscellaneous changes. The first one we have is the format of the cards.
Yep.
A lot of people are have, this is kind of a polarizing opinion. Some people like them, some people don't.
Yeah.
What was the reason for the change, and what do you think has improved with the card format?
I don't know. I don't know if I give you much of a reason for it. I don't really do anything with the graphic design.
Okay.
But I do like these quite a bit. I've heard was it on Facebook? Jeremiah Peterson, I think. One of the card shop owner guys was loving the fact the sculpts are more visible in the dials, just because it'll help his people, when they're selling the HeroClix board, make sure they get the right card for the figure. I just like showing off the sculpts. I think the figures are pretty and it looks nice.
Yeah, because I think if you haven't seen the new format of the cards, take a look in the rules articles linked below. But I think it's the fourth rules article that has some examples of the format, including some previews of HeroClix figures that are coming up in the new set, and they have the sculpt prominently displayed on the front. The entire sculpt, not just like a bust of the sculpt, but the entire sculpt. And then also the dial is on the front. And then you have whatever the other information on the back.
Mm-hmm. I just like them. They pop more. They're flashier. They're nicer to look at. The dial is right up front. It's easier to reference. You got the improved movement abilities, improved target abilities right above the dial, which instead of being sort of like half blended into the sculpt image up top. I think they're easier to reference. I personally just love the way they look, but I recognize this is a very much a to each their own kind of thing. There's a lot of people who don't agree with me, and that's fine.
Yeah, that's...
I will say this though. I think the ones coming out in the future sets look better. I mean, the card format is the same, but I think the graphic design team, was figuring it out on this one and just really started nailing how to best angle the sculpts down the line.
Okay, that's interesting.
So.
All right. And another change that was made besides the card format is more of a rules change. Knockback damage is back.
Yes.
So, could you explain how knockback damage works?
The long requested return.
Yes.
So, I mean, knockback damage was taken out of the rules with the Wonder Woman 80th back in 2021, and down in 2023 has returned. Mostly the same as it was. So knockback damage occurs whenever a character is knocked back and their knockback path terminates early because they hit the edge of the map, they hit blocking terrain, they hit the elevation line for a higher elevation, or they went over the elevation line and fell down to a lower elevation. In any of those cases, if that happened, then they are dealt one click of damage. And it's just regular damage. It's not penetrating, not unavoidable. So toughness or better will save you. But
and also, so terminated early. So that includes falling off elevated onto a lower elevation.
Yep.
That's an early termination of knockback. So
right. The knockback into a character won't give you knockback damage, but every other sort of early termination for the knockback path does.
Okay. And so with when and it's still the same that knockback is considered placement, right?
Correct. Yeah, you place them one at a time into each square until they've one of those terminating things happens, or you place them in the third square and nothing happened.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
And then this is an interesting one. There's a difference in resolution of triggered effects. So
Yeah. So
how does
this
how
one.
does resolution of triggered effects work now, or
So
will work?
so right now, it's a much easier thing to explain, but it's miserable in practice. So
Okay.
currently, if there's multiple simultaneous effects resolving, the active player, whoever's turn it is, gets to make them resolve in whatever order they want. It doesn't matter if they're resolving their own effects or their opponent's effects. They just get to structure them in whatever order they like. Which in practice means that if your opponent has multiple effects and it's more beneficial for you to resolve them in one way than the other, that's the way you'll do it. This is not a whole lot of fun for the opponent who paid points for these effects and now doesn't really get to use them.
Okay.
Uh, Going forward, simultaneous resolutions are a little more complex to explain, but it basically boils down to the active player gets to do their stuff, and then every other player gets to do their stuff. So for a two player game, you and me, if it's your turn and and we both have effects that trigger, as the active player, you get to resolve your effect first, and then as the non-active player, I get to resolve mine once you're done. So a good example of that would be like Steel Energy and Mystics. So you have Steel Energy, I have Mystics, you hit me. After resolutions come, these are two effects trying to resolve simultaneously. You heal one, and the I deal you one. So it's your turn. You heal first, then I would deal you one after the heal.
Okay.
Um, for things that you know, let's say the other classic one is Super Senses and Mastermind. If I have both Super Senses and Mastermind, and you make an attack that would hit me, you don't have any simultaneous effects to resolve here, so you don't do anything. Then it goes to me. I have two simultaneous effects. Well, for my character, I can resolve them in whichever order I want. Let's say I can choose to roll super senses first and see what the result is. Then, if I fail super senses, mastermind it off to someone.
Okay. So
Yeah,
yeah. So that's because you are because it's your effect for your
right,
character.
right.
It's
Because they're
not because
both
you're the active player. It's because
right,
that's your effect from your character. So you
right.
decide.
Yep.
Okay.
So it is a little bit more to explain. Like if you get into like the technical rules level of it all, but the basic gist of it is that the active player handles their own stuff first. The non-active player handles their own stuff second.
Okay. So like things like if I'm multi-targeting and then
Mm-hmm.
you have characters with super senses, that's still the same, right? Like
Right.
you roll your senses first and then I can decide the target, right? Or no?
Yep. So similar thing. I mean, in most cases, that's going to play out exactly the same as it always has. So let's say you target three characters and they all have super senses. Currently, you would get to choose the order they roll senses in. Now, I would get to choose the order they roll senses in.
Mm-hmm.
In practice, I mean, I can't even think of anything that would matter what order those senses were
Well,
rolled in.
let's say
But
there's three
yeah,
characters and one of them has super senses, and
right.
I target three characters. One of them has super senses. Do I have to
So
divide the
in that
damage up first, or
Nope. In that case, you don't have a simultaneous effect triggering, so it doesn't matter for. So
okay,
senses gets rolled. Let's say it's a miss. Damage comes after that, and you get to divide the damage up amongst all the hit characters. That is absolutely no change from how things currently work.
okay? And then also, what about like characters? I mean, I've heard like people talking about like Emperor Gladiator getting a buff from this.
Yes.
So
So
how does that work?
Emperor Gladiator got a little sneaky buff because there was a tweak to impervious that wasn't mentioned because this is a really small wording issue that only matters if you're like 5 levels deep on rules knowledge. But the timing for the trigger on Impervious changed a little bit, so it doesn't trigger the same time as Gladiator's other effect anymore. Even if it hadn't, and they were still simultaneous effects with each other, the now because they're both Gladiator's effects, Gladiator's controller gets to resolve them in the order he wants, which means that in just about every case, Gladiator's going to choose to roll Impervious before he'll choose to see if he's going to remove the token to just negate the damage entirely.
And before he wasn't able to do that, now he is able to do that.
Yep. In the current, soon to be previous edition of the rules, he could not. The opponent could force him to eat the token before rolling to see what Impervious would be.
Okay. Interesting. So
yes, Gladiator is got a real bit of a buff there. He's back in contention as possibly best prime.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that should be the way it works too. Like,
it makes sense that you would control your own figures.
because you paid the points for Emperor Gladiator Prime, and that's the way he should work. Like,
yeah.
Okay, so let's see. All right, so this is the big one here. All right, so there's a couple of big ones here. So theme teams. First of all, theme teams get +3 to their initiative roll no matter what. Doesn't matter how many characters are on your force.
Yep.
They're getting +3. If you have a theme team, you get +3 to your initiative roll. Mm-hmm. It is called an initiative roll, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm not sure if that's what it's called in the rules, but everyone just calls it an initiative roll.
And then so I like that change, the +3 to teams. Theme teams, just all flat across the board. It makes it incentivizes making smaller teams, so you don't have to make a team with like 10 characters or 8 characters anymore. I can run if I like playing one-man army or tentpole, and I want to run like a 3-character team, I'll still get I'll still have a decent chance of winning the map, or going first or whatever I want to do, because now I have choice.
It does take a bite out of the couple teams that had access to those like 10-point theme fluff characters. So we might be able to see more varied team construction, just more themes that will matter now that you don't need to worry about getting to a +10, +11 theme bonus.
I don't need to add multiple man just to get an extra +1.
Right.
Yeah.
But a lot of those little theme fluff characters also had useful powers. That
I mean, multiple man's good. So, multiple man's pretty good. Yeah.
It's not like, they weren't doing anything but adding theme, but it does mean that more teams are viable now, because everyone can get that theme bonus.
Yeah, and Adam had a question from Clix in it. He said, what keywords are the strongest now with the new rules?
Oh, geez. I don't think I have a good answer for that. I don't know if we're going to see a huge change in what keywords are best. I mean, X-Men is still going to be, the team that has everything. Mystical gets you Scarlet Witch, Agatha. Those are still really good. We got Detective and Mystery Inc. kind of sneaking up the sides. Those mystery cards are, pretty useful little tools. I don't think we're going to see a massive shift in what themes are being played, but I think we're going to just see a bit wider of a pool of what can be meta viable.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a really good answer for that.
No, I mean it's a tough one, and it remains to be seen, because there's a new set coming out pretty soon, the Spider-Man set. So we'll see.
Spider-Man Ally.
Yeah,
Sinister Six.
Ooh, Sinister Six. Yeah, that'd be. I can't wait for that. Actually, we haven't seen a lot. We haven't seen Sinister Six in a while. And so or Sinister Syndicate, or so there's also no theme team probability control, and this is a big one that a lot of people are talking about.
So, this is the one. I feel them. I loved theme team prob, but you can look at how it was used. It was generally on turn 1. If you had theme prob, turn one. Turn one was set up in immunity. On turn two, when engagement happened, or turn three, if engagement happened, then theme props were just going to get blown. They were not this long-standing resource that had massive effect on the game. They were just a quick burn through them, try to get that initial hit in, and carry whatever advantage that gives you on forward.
Yeah.
The This forces you to actually find figures that have prob to run that. You can't just rely on those initial.
I mean, another keyword might be mystical too, because they have a lot of
yeah. Mystical does get prob pretty often. Spider-Man Ally gets it a fair bit too, but I honestly, with it gone, I don't see a huge shift in play as we're going from I'm burning all of my theme probs at the same time my opponent's burning all of his theme probs on that initial attack, and then we're just fighting without theme probs to we're just fighting without theme probs. A lot of it was a zero sum most games.
Yeah,
so I know people liked having theme probs, and that sort of extra level of security that your plan was going to go through without needing to pay the points for prob. It's nice, and no one likes getting stuff taken away from them. But I think overall, the game comes out in a better spot for it.
Yeah, and I mean that leads me to my next follow-up question, I guess, because there are some people. I mean, there's a trend of thinking for some people. They're saying, what's my incentive to play a theme team now, or is there less of an incentive to play a theme team and try to win initiative? And does this take, instead of improving diversity, does it take away from diversity? How does it affect the diversity of teams? Because if you're playing just non-theme with all the best stuff, it's gonna, I don't know. What do you think about that?
For sure, it does take some wind out of the sails of theme. I'd have to be crazy to get up here and say, oh yeah, no, theme is exactly as good as it always was. It's not, but theme is still very valuable. The ability to control the map, to get that roll for first player or second player if you want. Bud, please stop. I'm sorry, the cats are feeling. They want to be present for this today. So yeah, getting that initial roll is still a very valuable thing to have. That +3 bonus is I think that comes out something like 76% of the time you'll win map versus non-theme.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to dictate the map you're playing on, or getting that initial that first turn if that's what your team needs, is still really good. We're also seeing a lot more characters, and as time goes on, we're going to see more and more of them that care about keywords, things that will boost up characters with shared keywords, or I'm trying to think of a good example, and I'm just blanking right now. The Miles Morales Spider-Man that gives Avengers Spider-Man ally, or characters that are adjacent or have Avengers Spider-Man ally. We're gonna see more effects like that reward you for building a lot of figures with the same keyword, so give them that extra cookie to.
Yeah, so I'm sure in play design, in design behind the scenes, when they're designing figures, they're going to be designing more figures that have those kind of synergies with keywords and things like that.
Right, yeah. Characters that share a keyword get a thing. Characters with this team ability get a thing. There's going to be lots of incentive to build teams that still hit that theme team mark. Detectives and mystery cards. If you're running mystery cards, you're going to want to run a lot of detectives. You might not be getting your theme props anymore, but you still want to have that library of mystery cards that you're getting clues on for all your detectives to benefit.
So I feel like sorry.
No, so it's stuff like that. It's not as explicitly in your face play theme as it used to, but there are still plenty of reasons to go theme.
Yes, I was just gonna concur with that. I was gonna say, looking back, it was kind of like 75% theme, 25% non-theme.
Right.
I mean, you could win with non-theme. It has been done, but now it looks like I feel like it's more balanced. It's more 50-50. Like you could play non-theme and 50% of the time and do fine, or you could play theme and you'll be fine with theme as well. So I feel like it just gives greater diversity, I think.
And
yeah.
I mean, even if we do start seeing more non-themes showing up, as long as they're not all literally cookie cutter same team, they could be different approaches to non-theme. We might have a non-theme Riddler mission point team where it's just a bunch of cheap perplex characters all trying to get that going. We could have non-themes that play out similar to the Soul, the world champ. Like he had that was one non-theme build that's we might see more of. There's non-theme is not a monolith. There's a whole bunch of different approaches you can take towards non-theme, and if we start seeing more of those pop up, cool. That's more diversity.
So it's not just like play the optimal figure. There's no like optimal figures that you have to play in non-theme.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. All right. And then there were a couple other rule changes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think the theme team taking away the theme team probability control is, I mean, just to say something else about that. I mean, it's interesting. It's going to make for. How do you think it affects gameplay in general? Like for me, like I don't know how I feel like that kind of like having probs is always like a crutch for me. Like having probs, if I'm rolling an attack, and it's just up to the dice gods to see if I hit or miss. It's kind of like
understandable,
yeah. But I mean that just it incentivizes playing prob on your team, right? Like you really want prob on your team. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I mean,
I'm perplexed too.
Given the choice between having just 11 attack and no probs, or perplex up to a 14 and 10 probs lined up on it. I mean, we all know what we want there.
Yeah.
So I hate seeing it called a crutch. I mean, it's just the optimal play. No one would turn down probs if probs were available.
That's true. Yeah. But they're just kind of like having that miss. Like if you don't have a prob available, it's kind of like takes the wind out of your sails. It's like, it's just either I hit or miss, and if I miss, I just have to keep going.
Right. But it obviously is not going to have no game effect. But like I pointed out, a lot of times, just in use cases, each team's theme probs were just used to nullify the other's theme probs.
Yes.
It was, you'd come in with, your initial attack missed, you'd prob it into a hit, they'd prob it to a miss, you'd prob it to a hit, it just right immediately all those theme probs would just get burned out, and then you're just playing without theme probs.
Yeah.
So in effect, in a lot of cases, we're just skipping that step to straight where just everyone's out of theme probs.
Mm-hmm. And it actually makes the game more simple too, because I would do a lot of
track.
It's one less thing to track. I remember just in playing my games, I would make sure I had like whatever printed probs I had, I'd have them in position before I make the attack. But then I would also count all my theme probs versus all their theme probs and see you have to calculate the probability of hitting. So like if I need to roll a 7 and I'm gonna be able to re-roll it twice, but my opponent's gonna be able to re-roll it 3 times. So that really means I have to hit a 7. I have to roll a 7 twice, which means there's less chance of me doing that. So maybe I don't make the attack. It's just like a lot to track, right?
Right. Then you need the attack to try to bait the probs out so they get spent. Yeah, it's
yes.
In a lot of ways, less is more. Just as a simpler game experience, not having to worry about those. Just the characters that actually prob.
And so it makes characters that actually prob very good. So so we're gonna, and okay, so I think we talked a lot about that. There's another miscellaneous change, which is the sideline. The sideline is now 2 elements per 100 points. So
Yep.
for a 300 point team, it's now 6 elements instead of 9.
Yeah.
9 is what it is now, but in with the new game rules changes, it will be 6 elements on your sideline for a 300 point game.
Hmm.
I like this change.
Yeah.
It makes it simpler. Um,
Listen. So yeah, there's two parts to that too. The one is that it sideline shrunk down. So swap teams are just a little less flexible. Destroyer is just a little less of the obvious, prime run because he eats up a larger chunk of your sideline.
mhm.
It, I think that's great. The other one that I'm really fond of is the elimination of the rule that everything on the sideline needs a reason to be there and can only be used for whatever that reason is.
Oh, okay, yeah, that has
So,
changed as well. Okay.
right. Which, I mean, just coming from someone who's done like rules advisory, trying to pin down exactly what a reason is in HeroClix was for why someone's on the sideline. It leads to some rules headaches. I am glad that's gone. Uh,
When oh,
it also curtails some really tricky interactions that unintuitive interactions that no longer matter. Like the classic one I've seen people bring up is the garbage can Spidey.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah. So how does
Yeah.
that work now? Yeah. can you
So
can you
now
just keep turning back into Peter Parker now, or?
he when he at the beginning of the game generates the garbage can.
Mhm.
The first time he would be KO'd, uh, he the garbage can is removed from the game, and he turns into the Peter Parker figure.
Mhm.
So previously, that's where that interaction stopped. And if Peter got KO'd, Peter was gone. Because Peter's trait that lets him turn into the Spider-Man thing was hampered by the fact that characters could only enter and leave the sideline for whatever reason that they were included on the sideline for.
Mhm.
So because Peter was sidelined for the garbage can trait, he could not enter the sideline for his replacement trait, which meant that you couldn't replace him back with
Yeah.
Spider-Man like his trait says to do, which is confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, try explaining that to a new player and watch their eyes just glaze over.
So now
So
now Peter Parker can, when he gets
it
KO'd, he
he
can.
functions exactly like his card says he does.
So his secret identity, he can turn back into a
Right.
Spider-Man.
And
Okay.
the Spider-Man figure will jump back from the sideline on the secret identity clicks. And because it's not beginning of game, he doesn't make another garbage can. So when he gets KO'd, he's just done for real that time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yes. So I feel like that, and that's not too overpowered or anything. I mean that works
I,
works
we
as intended, probably. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I've sat down, I combed through everything that's come out since that rule was implemented. That I think is the biggest power boost any one figure got.
Hmm.
So yeah, it really just eliminates a whole lot of rules headaches trying to explain things to people.
Okay. Yeah. Um. And the last thing is crossing elevated. So
Yep.
this was a big rules change. So now, even if you're not a flyer or if you don't have improved movement, if you move up to the edge of if you're moving, you can go up to a higher elevation. You just have to stop on the edge of the elevated. It doesn't matter if you're using a transition square or not. You can just walk up to the edge of elevated, but then you have to stop.
Yeah.
You could also charge up to the or running shot up to the edge of elevated and then make your attack. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, this is the same sort of vein as with the Wonder Woman rules eliminating the effects of hindering movement. This is a superhero game. Like these are people, powered individuals for the most part. They are above and beyond what a regular human can do. So yeah, the idea of them being able to scrabble up a cliff ledge or do a superhero landing off and not take damage, it just kind of fits with the game, at least on a flavor level. On a mechanics level, it means that the maps are a little more traversable. It's harder to just lock your opponent out of playing by manipulating terrain, which is just a excellent thing to have. And it makes it harder to hide from your opponent, so you really got to engage with what's going on. Just all in all, it makes games flow faster and much more dynamically.
Great, great, yeah, and
Yep.
I think it's a good change. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's just gonna make characters more mobile. It makes non-flyers more valuable because
Hmm.
sometimes you just need sometimes characters don't have flying, but you want to use them and still have that mobility. So it increases mobility for non-flyers, which is good.
Yeah.
All right, so I think that's we covered everything, right? Is that the entire?
That's it, really. I mean, yeah, the only other thing on the article here is just a list of random odds and ends fixed, but I mean, these are mostly like spelling errors and
Yeah, I mean, if you have
including WID rulings. Nothing really
um
there that's
if we missed anything, or if you are curious about going into more detail about any of these rules changes, I mean, I'm talking to the people at home or the people watching or listening. Be sure to read through the comprehensive rule book to get a better understanding of the rules being implemented with the Spider-Man Beyond Amazing set. You could also check the rules articles, which I've linked below. It's not an actual link; you have to type it in. But
mhm.
it is WizKids.com/HeroClix/2023. And if you type that in, then you'll see all of the four rules articles, the articles for the rules changes. And I think they will. I think we're all very excited for HeroClix to be evolving the way that it is, and
Yeah.
I'm excited for the new set.
And just a quick plug here too. The bottom of Article 1, there's a email there, gamefeedback@wizkids.com. There is a FAQ getting put together that's going to get posted. If you have any questions, concerns, anything, feel free to email that, and your question might get answered by by WizKids.
Yes, that's very important. So check that out.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, you can find me. You can find Coffee and Clicks. You can just type in at Coffee and Clicks, and you can find all the links to my media. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on this video. Thanks, Brian, for joining me.
thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And don't forget, everybody. I'll use my Yeti to if I can get it into the picture. Don't forget, everybody. Wake up and smell the clicks.